Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
Spoiler alert, that was not good. That was the worst effort I have seen defensively from this basketball team all season long. The Atlanta Hawks did whatever they wanted to do, specifically Trae Young. Now, I will say, I think the refs were brutal sending this guy to the free throw line 20 times, popping his head back, doing the standard James Harden, if you will, doing what the NBA does. So it's not really Trae Young's fault, but he got sent to the free throw line way too many times. But he did dominate the game as well in other ways. He had 39 points, 18 assists, and he had a double-double in the first quarter, okay? So it's not as if he didn't do a great job in other areas of the game. It's very possible for him to dominate the way that he did, but also get a lot of calls to go to the free throw line. Both happened, right? So it is a fact that both of those things occurred. The Sixers had no answers, and they were allowing him to do whatever he wanted. They allowed the Hawks to do a pick and roll consistently. They could not stop a pick and roll, and that is something that has been a problem throughout Brett Brown's tenure. It is a consistent theme. The pick and roll cannot be stopped, and I believe that the Hawks head coach knew that, okay? He was probably laughing when dialing up a game plan for this basketball game. Now, to be fair, it's not as if this is the playoffs where you're dissecting film every single night for your opponent. That doesn't happen in regular season basketball, and that's why you get away with certain things throughout the 82-game regular season. But we all know that Lloyd knew that this team is a horrendous pick-and-roll basketball team when it comes to defending. And another statement that is, to be fair, the whole league does pick and roll all the time, except for the Sixers, it seems like. So, whatever. I mean, the Sixers can't defend a pick and roll. Shocker. Here's another spoiler alert. But it's so annoying to watch that effort defensively. That's what this team does to win games. When they are willing to do it, they are unstoppable. They are beasts. When they are unwilling to do it, it's embarrassing. It looks atrocious, and they look awful. That was definitely the worst I have ever seen it this season. They did not feel as if they needed to compete against that squad. They allowed 74 points in the first half. And as I stated, a lot of bad calls sending Trae Young to the foul line. Well, that happened at the end of the first half where Shake Milton actually kept this team alive. But due to a weird, horrible foul call on Tobias Harris, and then he gets teed up, and then Brett Brown gets teed up, Trae Young goes to the charity stripe for 3 shots for the three-pointer that he got fouled on, and I'm using air quotes when I say foul, and then he gets 2 extra shots due to the technicals, and that changed the momentum switch that was occurring late in that second quarter, going into halftime. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to this game, but before we do, we all need to hear a word from my sponsor, SeatGeek. Are you looking to go to a game or a concert or anything out there? If you use the promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page, you get $20 off of your total purchase. It's a no-brainer. Use the promo code BROADS today. It's free parking. All right, so let's get more into this. I know Ben Simmons was named an All-Star, and he was an All-Star reserve. Trae Young starting. So there was definitely a little head-to-head action going on, specifically super early when Ben Simmons had his head down, being aggressive. He looked like Ben Simmons I haven't seen before, really. He was to that level of aggressive when it comes to that first quarter and going hard to the rim, not being stopped, continuing to drill through the paint and getting hard, or getting to the rim hard. I'll talk more about Ben Simmons and the All-Star game as a whole probably on Friday, since the Sixers have an off day. I don't want to go into that right now. I want to break down this game because there is a lot of frustration coming out of this team as they fall to a garbage squad that had 12 wins before this game. The Sixers are 9-16 on the road, 22-2 at home. The difference is mind-blowing. It's embarrassing. And knowing that they have a 3-game stretch coming up now of Boston, Milwaukee, and Miami. Not in that order. I believe it's Boston, Miami, then Milwaukee, and also the Clippers. Knowing that that's what's left, there was your opportunity to snag a win. going on a stretch like that, if you came out 2-2, you think to yourself, okay, it could have been worse, right? Like, you don't want to lose basketball games, but you got to be realistic with yourself, knowing this team is bad on the road, knowing the opponents that they're facing, knowing that they're down a starter already, and know Al Horford in this game as well, and I just believe that is a rest day, if you will. I don't think Al Horford's injury is going to keep him out long-term for this stretch. So moving forward, that has really nothing to do with it. But knowing that stuff, you think to yourself, would you take 2-2 before you return home? Yeah, probably. Probably you would. This makes that a little bit harder to do, okay? It does. When you look at this team getting out-rebounded, how? How does John Collins have 20 rebounds? Unacceptable. You can't get out-rebounded by this Atlanta Hawks team. Who do they have that should be grabbing boards like that? The answer is nobody. And Joel Embiid, he obviously is still getting used to this thing that he's wearing on his hand because it's affecting him. And he shot 2 of 7 from the free throw line, so it's clearly something he needs to work with, and he needs to get comfortable with it. But I have to say that's the reason why, right? I mean, I have to say that's the reason why. The thing on his hand. Because there's no way he should be able to get out-rebounded like that. But there's times throughout this game where it just defined how the Sixers were playing defensively. Not boxing out, having guys grabbing easy rebounds and tipping them back in to end quarters, not paying attention to what's going on the floor, and as the ball hits the rim, easy tap-ins. Come on. Joel, yes, he's coming back from a mini stretch of not playing games. I was going to say a significant amount of time, but it wasn't really significant, but it was a decent amount of time missed. And now he had surgery. Like, I understand the circumstances, but I thought as if he wasn't engaged. He wasn't really competing hard. Looked like he was just going through the motions, and that has nothing to really do with the hand. There's no one on that team that should stop Joel Embiid. And believe it or not, Vince Carter was guarding Joel Embiid at times. Now, in the post-game show, they did a good job of showing how there were moments where Joel Embiid had Vince Carter where he wanted him to, and they weren't getting the ball to him. And that's a problem. Get the ball to the big man. If they were not doing it and he was getting in position, that's on the other guys for not getting him the damn ball. But still, Vince Carter should never be able to give Joel Embiid a hard time at all. Ever. Two players that I can't yell at. One is Ben Simmons for his 31-point night, and he shot 11 of 13 from the free throw line. Really impressive. Throughout the last 5 games or so, his free throw shooting has been remarkable. It really has been a beautiful thing to see. He looks confident. He's going up there and for his particular rhythm, right? For his particular rhythm, which is not standard looking. It looks smooth. He also had 4 steals, but I thought that there were times where he didn't really have the same intensity that he normally does. Like, there are moments when you see Ben be aggressive, get in the face of people, get his hands in the cookie jar, and he's just a guy that's super long, super athletic, super big, and he does greatness with his hands defensively. And you see that, like, damn. But he didn't bring it like he normally does. That wasn't a full thing for Ben. So I can't yell at him as a whole. Could he have done better defensively at times? Yeah, I thought he got lost in certain situations, and as a 5 at times, he allowed people to get behind him. The whole team did, though, but as a whole, Ben Simmons was fine. He wasn't the problem. Shake Milton was definitely not the problem. He was +8 in this game. And when you look at everybody else's plus-minus, for him to be +8, that's saying a lot. And he scored, what did he finish with? Shake Milton finished with 27 points and 5 3-pointers. And he was actually holding this team in the game at certain spots. So those 2 players I'm fine with. Matisse Thybulle. I just credited him saying he affects every game he's in no matter what. This was a bad basketball game for Matisse Thybulle. A lot of foul trouble, which kept him off the floor. I expect more out of Matisse Thybulle. He's been playing so well all season long. I expect more out of Matisse Thybulle. The bench was abysmal. Now you can make this argument. When Josh Richardson's healthy, when Al Horford is in the lineup, Shake Milton's coming off the bench. Matisse Thybulle's coming off the bench. That helps your bench play. Absolutely. That's a fair argument. But for this game, that wasn't the circumstance. And in this game, the bench was awful. Now, Mike Scott, believe it or not, scored double digits, and he was being active at times. He died down towards the end. But as a whole, Mike Scott was doable. Compared to what he's been giving us, you'll take it. Doable. Everyone else, trash. Raul Neto, trash. For as good, I guess you'd say, as the Raul Neto game was the other night where he had 19 points in the first half, this was the complete opposite of awful. I mean, it was awful. He was getting abused. Now, if I'm Brett Brown, I don't know how you continue to go with this guy. He keeps talking about not wanting to rot players at Trey Burke sitting on the bench. I will always counter my Raul Neto versus Trey Burke argument with this. Trey Burke's not that good either. Is he better than Neto? Yes, I think he is better. But Trey Burke is not that great either. He gives you more, but still, let's not act like Lou Will is on the bench and he's electing to go with Raul Neto instead. Trey Burke is a better option, so I don't understand going with Neto, especially in this game after he gets torched for a majority of his minutes. But once again, it's not as if there is legit talent sitting on the bench and he's going, nah, I'm going to give it to this guy instead. But I think it's time to give Trey Burke that opportunity once again because he has the ability to do more than what Neto does. Furkan, 0 for 7. Now listen, I've not been a big fan of Furkan Korkmaz throughout his couple seasons here. We all know that. I don't think he's an 0 for 7 shooter. But I think throughout this last stretch that he's been on, he's been knocking down shots. He's been shooting over 40%, and he's been what this team needs at times, a three-point shooter who can stretch the floor. I don't think he's an 0 for 7 guy, but he had a bad game in this game. This wasn't a game where it was acceptable for the bench to be this quiet. They needed the bench to step up, and nobody really could. James Ennis, no. How about Zhaire Smith? All right, this guy played less than 10 minutes. He played 9 minutes. He was minus 13. The dude's just not ready to play NBA basketball. You see athleticism, and he's super young, so I'm not just going to say he stinks completely and he's awful and he's the worst guy in the world, but for what this team needs right now and for where this team is, I think he's overwhelmed big time, and he's not ready for this team just yet. To play 9 minutes and to be minus 13, he was overwhelmed. He looked outmatched, absolutely. So for the bench to do that bad, it's disappointing. And they just never had it. The Sixers as a whole never had it. Dribble penetration, getting to the rim. How many times did they have easy-ass buckets right by the basket, right by the rim? Too many to even count. And with that pick and roll, and then there were times where nobody was out by the perimeter, and they're allowing the Hawks to shoot at will, wide open looks. They did not feel like defending. And I just can't comprehend that because this team knows that's their bread and butter. That's what makes them win basketball games. That's how they perform at a high level. It all starts with the defense. That's their motor. But here's what you have. You have a team that just beat the Lakers at home without 2 starters. They went on the road to face the Atlanta Hawks knowing that there's 3 tough opponents waiting. Oh, we could walk through this team. Oh, we could dominate this team. We don't really have to compete. We don't need to really do anything. This team's horrible. They don't play much defense. We can just do whatever we want out there. Oh, yeah, I'm sure you could. What a joke. It was a bad game. Really bad game. From everyone. From Brett Brown to not really making adjustments. There were times where they continued to do the same thing. The same thing. Trae Young with the ball, pick and roll. The same thing. So Brett Brown, bad. And everyone else other than Ben Simmons and Shake Milton, bad. I don't care if you don't have 2 starters for this one. They had 12 wins coming into the game. You really have to stop one guy, and that's Trae Young. And they weren't able to do it. Now, I'll give him his credit. The dude was making plays happen. Some of the passes were legit as hell, too. Whoa. It's a really nice pass. Like, he was threading the needle in certain moments. He was making plays happen. He was knocking down shots. Like, he had a good game. I still think it's ridiculous he went to the line as many times as he did, and that's the NBA, though. It's not his fault. I don't knock him for that, because that's what you do. Wouldn't you love it if someone was on your team popping their head back, getting foul calls, getting sent to the line so many times? Absolutely. Well, the Sixers went to the line 45 times total. It wasn't as if they weren't getting fouled and going to the line. The refs were calling it ticky-tack all night long, to be fair. But something I always point out with this team, because I think it is a problem, free throw shooting. And they shot about 70%. I believe the finish was 71%. Yeah. They missed 12 free throws. It's a good bit. It's a good bit. Ben Simmons made a play in this game where he was trying to go around the back as he was running full speed to the basket, and it got caught behind his back, and he's still trying to hold the basketball, and it's a clear travel. I mean, obvious travel. How the refs don't call that, right? I talked about how they're brutal with the fouls on Trae Young and whatnot. I don't know how they don't call this one. It was a brutal miscall for them in terms of the Sixers getting a benefit out of it, and it leads to a three. What are they watching, right? Like, how do you miss that call? It can't be any more standard. That could be worse than that one LeBron travel that went viral where he picked up the basketball. And I mean, I don't understand sometimes. I just don't. Like, what else could you possibly be watching, right? And I can say the same for that Trae Young play at the end of the first half. Now, I'm not saying the reason why the Sixers lost this game by any means is because of the foul calls. Because the reason why they lost the game is they did not feel like defending. Because they didn't feel like rebounding. They let a garbage team out-rebound them. I mentioned how their identity is defense. Their identity is also grabbing boards. We all know that's effort. They didn't really have effort. You have Tobias Harris when they're down 6 jacking up a 3 that hits the backboard. Come on, fellas. Now, you really think that Brett Brown drew up a play that said, yo, Tobias, curl around here, take a 3 and hit the backside of the backboard? I think that'd be good. Putrid. The way to describe it is putrid. And it's really upsetting to see this team fall on their face, flat on their face, against bad opponents. It's a mental thing with this team. You know, a lot of people get fed up to an extreme when they lose these games, which I get it because in the heat of the moment, it's really frustrating. And I'm the same way. During the game, how can you let up 74 points to this team in the first half? How can you let this team abuse you like that? How can you allow this team to get wherever they want on the floor at all times? Like, I understand why it bothers people. Because it should. But, and there is going to be a but for me, every time this team plays a good opponent, they show up to compete. That doesn't mean they win, but they show up to compete. Their defense is unbelievable. They bring it. They bring the energy. They're involved. They're in the mix with every other good team. When they play a good team. When they play a bad team, they don't. They just don't. Now, that's not right. But what I'm saying is, as annoyed as I am with this basketball game and what they do against these trash teams consistently, specifically on the road, they don't have to play the Atlanta Hawks on the road in the spring. You can bring up the argument that these are the losses that make the standings different, and we see how dominant they are at home. Absolutely, and I get that. But we'll see how they finish this stretch off. What if they beat the Celtics on Saturday? How do people feel about this game against the Hawks then? You know what I mean? It's so based off of every game. And that's not healthy for 82 games, right? It's not. Now, if they lose to Boston, then it all piles up and it's a snowball. But if they win against Boston, this one kind of gets thrown away in the trash because it shows you that they can beat a good team on the road. But that shouldn't take away, what they did in this one, because the frustration is legit, and there's a reason to be frustrated, and it's valid. It absolutely is valid for this game. But for big picture, as I've stated many times, you should know by now what this team is. If they won this game by 6, if they won this game by 10, if they lost this game by 4, does that really change what you thought about this team before this basketball game, you know? You know what I mean? And that's the difference between reacting to every Eagles game on a Sunday and then a season that's 82 games, or for the Phillies, a season that's 162 games. That's all I'm saying. But you are allowed to be mad and bothered by this loss, for sure. But because of this game individually, I think by now you personally should have your opinion set on what this team is by now. As I stated, we will discuss Ben Simmons getting into the All-Star game and Joel Embiid as well. I think I'll do that on the off day in between this Atlanta Hawks game and the Boston Celtics on Saturday night. So Friday, I'll probably talk more about that. I wanted to discuss this game individually because I thought it was something that can definitely take some time. When you have Trae Young balling out like that, when you have Vince Carter, I mean, I can't believe Vince Carter is still doing this. He's 43 years old. 43 years old. And he's contributing to this team. Now, he's not the same as he once was, and he can still dunk, but he's not as athletic as he once was. But my point is, he still has value in this league. It's not as if he's just going through a final tour where he's got nothing left in the tank. There's something there. It's a minor role, but there's something there. And for a young team like that, I know they don't compete for titles, and he's like a veteran presence on a really good team, but he's got enough left in the tank to at least literally give this team something. I can't believe it. I remember watching this guy in the purple Toronto Raptors jersey doing these obnoxious dunks all the time. And he's still kicking it, and he's still got some moves at times, and he's knocking down threes, and what the hell is going on? Vince Carter is still playing. To put it in perspective, the news about Kobe Bryant, which is still so devastating and crushes me still, 41 years old. And he's been out of the league for a couple years because his body broke down when he was playing on his final years, and he continued to have injuries. Like, that's impressive to be 43 and still kicking it. Still playing with these young guns. With the way the speed is these days, with all the young kids running up and down the floor at a high pace. Amazing. I'm amazed. I'm sitting here right now and was convincing myself I'm more amazed than I was before I started writing it down on my notes. Incredible. So they lose. Terrible. Just terrible. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up button and subscribe, and I will see you next time.